Thank you guys for coming back to spaceexplr. I've done an episode 114, as you see here, or if you're listening, 114, and we have a very special guest today on the show. His name is Sunny. So I'll let him to take from here and explain a little bit more for you guys what he's currently working on. But first, I want to say a big thank you again for coming over.
Thank you, Martinez, for inviting me, and I'm very excited to be here. Hi everyone. I'm Dr. Sani Narayanan, but throughout this podcast, Sani will be just totally fine. A brief introduction of myself. I am currently a NASA postdoctoral fellow at Florida State University in the U.S., and I've been really blessed to be to support and been involved with our human space exploration efforts for the entirety of my career. This began as a high school student at West Virginia, also in the United States, through a set of internship opportunities. And I'd grown up always been fascinated by space and uh, 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 was always motivated and was interested to support our human space exploration program. So I was really blessed to get started early on. And my interest began in engineering, where in terms of space exploration topics, the general idea, framework uh, a public may have would be to think about the rockets, the rovers, the telescopes, the space stations. That's first impression generally when people would think of NASA or European Space Agency or anywhere in the world with regards to space. Um, and that was my initial interest as well, and how I was able to support our human space exploration program at NASA. But I also had a inherent fascination and interest in biology and in medicine in particular, and which is one may think completely opposite side of in terms of uh, uh, scientific interests or maybe not generally what is considered with regards to what NASA may be doing, um, but through the opportunity to be involved with NASA and to learn about the various projects and being highly motivated and curious, I discovered that yes, there was a connection with medicine and with what NASA is doing, and I could phrase it very simply as follows: it wouldn't be human space exploration without the human word as part of that. Um, and ultimately, our international efforts of space exploration, from my perspective, are to learn about the universe, to develop projects and systems to take astronauts or in the near future civilian individuals to travel into space, whether around the Earth or around the moon or on the surface of the moon and Mars maybe one day. Um, but all those elements are to develop and provide tools for us as people, as well as systems that transport people into space. Um, and in doing that, in our coordinated efforts and collaborative efforts to develop these projects, we also together experience some very interesting and challenging problems and questions and endeavors. And and from my perspective, that's the inspirational aspect of human space exploration, where we work together, and in doing so, not just learn more about the universe, but ourselves in that journey as well. That's how my interest in the area of what I focus on now: space biology and space medicine. That's been combined together, and what I in short study and focus on now, which I look forward to sharing more details of, and how I got to this stage.
That's amazing. So again, great story. And the rest of the story, as I mentioned, is going to be included in the show notes for you guys to read, because there's a lot to cover, and hopefully we can cover 99% on today's show. But look, the question is, as we talk about this kind of self-discovery process through this innovation in a space flight and just continue to explore the universe. So what do you think is going to happen with that self-discovery? Like, how do you imagine that the future is going to look like?
Yes. So thank you for that question. In my opinion, we are at a phase of space exploration that is approaching an potentially exponential level of growth in terms of the capacity to learn about the universe and travel into space, but also the potential of the breadth and scope of individuals that may be able to support and lead and develop more projects and innovative new ideas and concepts with what has happened, for example, from the launch platforms, in terms of the number of vehicles that now exist in terms of carrying payloads of all different types, scientific, technological, engineering, you name it, education. That has increased exponentially in the past decade, and I speculate, based off of the trend, it will continue to do so. And that is, as others have described, the one of the biggest challenges in terms of making space accessible for everyone, just getting into space. That is occurring. That's occurring more so than it has in the past 30 years, and that really will enable the growth. In my opinion, the growth and the ability to really explore what we can do in space, and that's where the self-discovery aspect really comes in play, in my opinion. Current space missions, they've had to be very focused because of the cost and the risk associated with conducting space experiments. But now that's becoming, there are more options, that's becoming more accessible. That in turn will lower the risk of the type of experiments that can be conducted. And then that in of itself increases the scope, in my opinion, the type and in particular the individuals that can develop space related projects, as well as the internet. There's a lot more advancement in internet accessibility and sharing of space-related resources in terms of telescopes and whether on the ground or in space. So that is also an important element in terms of increasing number of individuals that can support space exploration.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. As we talk about the space telescopes, you guys probably see this behind me, extremely large telescope that's currently being built in the Atacama Desert. It's going to be tremendous piece of equipment for this continuous space exploration and science. So it's great. So I think we're moving into this future as we talk about, this discovery of ourselves and just, innovation and everything that will come through that. But again, we talk about the human space flight, right? As we talked about that, and it cannot exclude humans. If we want to continue to explore the universe, it has to include us too. It cannot be only the robots who can just go to Mars and explore it all the time. So again, and the question is now for the people who, including myself, they want to be part of that, space flight, space tourism, as we talk about these great ideas. like how it comes down to one thing, that kind of psychological change and physical change, that, you know,
Yes.
for now the threshold to become an astronaut is really high. And of course we probably have to find the way through, again, through nutrition, exercises, and again some laws and, you know, psychological kind of training. But if we just start with the easy one, kind of exercise, and probably exercise can touch the psychological side too a little bit. So what do you think it's a good start for the people like myself, like when it comes to exercise and nutrition, if we want to be like a future, you know, space tourist, like what's a good place?
For sure. Thank you for that question, as well as in terms of preference for space projects. I admire all space projects, rovers and the human,
Yeah.
and it's amazing with Perseverance and other more recently. But what is big difference between the human spaceflight and robotic is that humans have the ability to be curious, and in those environments can explore and innovate and ask questions that a robot is unable to do on its own. Um, so, but to get to your question, Martinez, with regards to, let me begin with our a brief overview of our current understanding of human adaptations to spaceflight, which we've learned a lot about in particular in the last 15 years, in the scope of all of human spaceflight, which began in the late 1950s, where it began with short duration missions, right? Where it would be a couple days orbiting, or whether around the Earth, or traveling to the moon and orbiting, landing, and then the space shuttle era and various a station like Mir that the Russians developed in the 70s. Those were all relatively short exposures to the spaceflight environment, and in turn, the human adaptations to spaceflight uh, uh, were present, but in the context of perhaps uncomfort, from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no discomfort, to 10 being incredibly uncomfortable, those adaptations were probably around 3 to 4 on the there are things like motion sickness, or discomfort, or with the space shuttle being a couple more days, a little bit of muscle and bone loss relative to what I'm going to share with later, of course. And that's where um, uh, the space tourism field, from my perspective, understanding, will focus on initially, where or maybe in less time than that, whereas it'll be in the range of a couple hours in space, or maybe a couple days in space. So from a both physiological and psychological perspective, I think psychologically it'd be uh, 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 euphoric and incredibly engaging, enthusiastic, and really a incredibly unique experience and perspective. Um, from a which may play a little bit with regards to some of the physiological excitement and whatnot, because they are somewhat related. But from a negative physiological adaptation, um, uh, they are, as based off of previous flight missions, uh, uncomfortable but also manageable. And in particular so it's also in the context of the astronaut or the cosmonaut, or for many spacefaring nation, the individuals that travel in the space, uh, highly trained and in very good shape. Um, uh, so they're very well accustomed to exercise. They have very unique specialized diets to optimize their performance in space. Um, which you're right is likely to be different versus a space tourist. Having tested some of the space food myself, it's uh, uh, it's uh, uh, it's good, but from a tourism perspective, maybe not what a tourism a tourist may find may find good, relatively speaking. Um, but it provides nutritional needs and support for the crew. Um, but in the context of the level of exercise and how that would fit into civilian space travel initially, I think it'd be relatively minor. And I also share that because uh, the short period of time an individual may be in space from a space tourism perspective, uh, uh, I, I, I would speculate they would prefer spending a time enjoying the unique environment, but to be encouraged to be supported by maybe 30 minutes of exercise as would be recommended on Earth. Um, um, and then enjoy as much as uh, 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 given what the space tourist providers are providing from a nutritional dietary, but also a pleasant space food experience. Um, Now, when we consider more long-term space travel opportunities, uh, that's where the level of exercise and dietary uh, 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 in the context of being in space for 4+ months up to a year and maybe longer. That's where certainly exercise and diet to uh, reduce the effects of certain adaptations. Um, it's not to say that they are um, uh, uh, on the scale that I highlighted before, on that scale of 1 to 10. The level of discomfort and the adaptations may be more in the range of 6 or 7, where there's going to be more bone and muscle loss, and there's going to be adaptation of the heart, and there are neurological adaptations. There are many adaptations. Um, uh, but they are also manageable within in the context of any individual in any individual's background, and those are trainable as well. Um, so I think that's where and I certainly I speculate that is where the real excitement of the space travel and tourism will take place. Being able to spend in several months in space, and then be able to do exercise and dietary changes as needed, to really when they return be able to recover quickly. Um,
Yeah, gotcha. So yeah, because like all these astronauts right now have this very, unique and again advanced training programs, and they follow the certain nutrition, and they've probably been doing that for many years. So for them, it's awesome. Like we need those people, and these are going to be the first people who are going to continue to go to Moon and Mars, with their Artemis mission, and who's going to follow the Mars after. So we need those people, of course, to go first. But as we continue to speak about this kind of, occupying Mars or colonizing Mars scenario, like not everybody is fit. I'm talking about the people
right,
who have the brain capacity, the brain power to do the work that's necessary, but
right.
just from physiology, from physiological kind of aspect, they don't have what it takes to travel, because they might have some cardiovascular problems, or psychology issues, so just through that related to the physical kind of aspect. So what's the way to solve that? Because maybe for them there's not enough time to get into shape because of the kind of genes that they carry through the generations, or whatever that is, or just being
Yes.
lazy. So what's the solution? Like, is there anything from kind of space medicine side can cover that? Just to space travel and 1/3 of the gravity or 1/6 of the gravity, that they can kind of help to save from the bone loss and bone
Yes.
and muscle loss and other effects? Like what are the biggest problems that we're facing with the space travel as we talk about the bone and muscle loss? Is there anything else that we should focus on, like that's a huge problem and will be in the future?
Yes. So thank you for that question. And with regards to a mission to Mars, that is certainly uh, introduces a number of risks associated with a mission to Mars in general, from an engineering perspective, but also from as we've highlighted, from a health perspective. And that is a similar mindset with regards to medical adaptations that an individual may experience when they travel into space. There are medical risks that can be tested for, screened for, that can be uh, trained or provided in the context of exercise training, where exercise has been shown to be very beneficial to lessen the level of bone and muscle loss, as well as heart-related cardiovascular adaptations, and additional supplements. There's also, with a mission to Mars, there are radiation effects, which increase the risk of a number of it introduces additional risk to the bone and muscle loss, cardiovascular loss. There are changes in neurocognitive uh, 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 physiology in the context of memory, in the context of also vision changes. So spaceflight leads uh, to adaptations all over the body. Uh, and to focus on a central adaptation is still an ongoing area of investigation, because of how, and it's a challenge compared with medical research, where medical research with medical conditions, it's generally hypotheses that suggest certain genes or certain environmental factors that specifically affect the bone or the muscle, uh, um, or there's a pathogen, like a microbe that causes a flu, and your immune system's activated. In space flight, how the environment affects us, affects everything. Um, so the the framework of thinking of how to handle those changes in spaceflight medical adaptations is a little different. But exercise has been shown to be profoundly beneficial. There have been to handle radiation. There have been uh, 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 compounds called antioxidants that reduce some of the effects of radiation exposure. And there are other engineering related avenues, such as propulsion. If a a launch vehicle is created that reduces the time of travel uh, to reach Mars. Right now, a Mars missions have been uh, planned for in the range of a 500 day round trip. Um, so a year and a half. Um, and 97% of that is the flight to Mars. 97, roughly speaking, but my point being is the vast majority. If that could be reduced to half of that, 50%, and then 50% is just that also reduces the time of the effects of being in microgravity, being exposed to radiation. And then there are other engineering systems that have been uh, 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 contemplated and thought about in terms of integration, such as artificial gravity. You highlighted that what if space travelers or um, astronauts traveling to Mars could experience 1/3 gravity or half gravity. That certainly will also reduce the effects of being in a low gravitational environment, um, and that in turn would benefit all the systems that respond to the changes in gravity. Um,
So
but
when we
there
talk,
are, yeah, go ahead.
so sorry, when we talk about artificial gravity, we're talking about, just for people to understand what it is. So we're talking about something like a centrifuge effect, right, in space, kind of spinning whatever cylinder that kind of keeps you attached to the surface that you're in, right?
Yes, so there have been various concepts kept in mind with regards to how a artificial gravity system may be implemented, with the idea being, yes, a rotational structure, um, either powered by the crew. There have been systems designed where the crew, there's a small enclosed room that has a cycling system that individuals to experience artificial gravity rest in and cycle, and they rotate in the room.
Oh, so it's like a hamsters in a wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, similar, and that is beneficial from a number of perspectives. One, it's a small habitat. Um, it has an exercise element to it, and it also introduces an artificial gravity environment, and doesn't require any power. In fact, it may generate some extra power even. Um, so that is one design. Other designs have been with regards to the spacecraft having sections have rotating. And in those rotating sections, that simulates centripetal acceleration. And depending on the rate of rotation, that generates accelerated forces that, depending on the rate of rotation.
And do you think the rate of rotation should be equal to the Earth's gravity or to the Mars gravity while you're traveling?
So with regards to the gravitational environment to simulate between Earth and Mars. Thank you for thinking about Mars versus Earth. In my opinion, it should be a combination. It should be a combination. It shouldn't be Earth entirely, and it shouldn't be Martian entirely. It should be a combination. And in fact, it may fluctuate depending on the trajectory and the timing, where and also the engineering burden. Um, a inherently an artificial gravity system that simulates Earth gravity the entire time, just based off of the physics required to maintain a gravity level at that level, will be more versus an artificial gravity environment at Martian or lunar gravity. So from an engineering perspective, uh, 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 there are advantages to not maintain Earth gravity the entire time. Similarly, from a medical perspective, um, where in my opinion, it's unhelpful. It would be unhelpful for the crew to fully experience Earth gravity the entire time, then enter Martian gravity, and then experience the adaptations on the at that point, versus there could be an acclimatization
If
period in advance.
if it's 7 months, it's quite a long time. Yeah.
Exactly. And it could be reversed. So perhaps Earth gravity for 6 months or 4 to 5 months, and then last 2 3 months Martian gravity landing, Martian inhabitants takes place, and then in reverse, returning to Martian gravity, and then as
So kind of slowly decreasing or increasing,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and that will also reduce the medical the medical adaptations, and we've learned this. They evolve based off of time. The medical adaptations that took place during space shuttle uh, 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 are showing to be different compared with adaptations that occur in 1 year in space. And there's still a lot that that is left to be discovered. And so that's also true with Martian gravity. So to allow those adaptations to happen in a managed, controlled manner, certainly I think having a a mission platform that is adaptive in terms of gravity is a great a great approach.
Perfect. So, and what about, because maybe that's, that's not it, what you talk about when you meet with people, I don't know, go on a podcast just like that. But I think this is a very important thing to discuss at least a little bit, kind of the kind of physical aspect of space travel, very important. And of course, we
Yes.
talk about how do we mitigate the risk, and that part is through exercise and some sort of a space medicine that can kind of click with your immune system, and it will kind of help you to boost the immune system for that period of time. So there is ways, and we have people working on that. But the other aspect that's kind of still a little bit left behind, but I know there's a lot of other people working on that. So the psychology aspect, because
Yes.
being in that kind of environment with the people, which I'm sure like some of the teammates who are going to travel, it's not going to be 1, 2 people. It might be a crew of 5 or 6 people, as NASA suggested, and that's why we have habitats on Earth mainly with 6 people, because that's how they suggested kind of crew environment for 6 people. So how do you imagine that scenario, and expanding from that to the space tourism and occupying Mars and all these scenarios? Like, how big of a problem is it going to be handling us and handling ourselves in those type environments?
Yes. So there have been various recommendations in terms of the number of crew and the composition of the crew, and uh, uh, and there have been various analog missions on Earth to simulate a Martian mission that have also explored and studied that in terms of the crew number in uh, uh, 3 crew or up to 5, 6. And it's a bit of a balancing act. One for the individuals, one for the team, and then 3, the engineering systems that support all of that. Where uh, there have been, certainly from a psychological perspective, uh, uh, research showing that there are isolation stresses associated with a space flight, being in a small enclosed environment, habitat that that a little bit similar to our coronavirus circumstance, in terms of not a very dynamic environment, and that introduces psychological stressors that do have an impact on physiological performance. So, in the context of missions to the moon or to Mars, it also somewhat depends on the mission objectives. A a first mission will likely be a composition. Will likely be a range of 3 to 6 of very skilled, but also interdisciplinary. So a very diverse skill set that can complement one another in terms of engineering, medicine,
Because
nutrition.
what if something happens for another team member and there's nobody else to cover that person for that position? So just like in the space shuttle program, and
Initially, that's the approach. What the early days of space shuttle, and then early days of an international space station. So that's a great model and a great example. But then and this also connects with the space tourism element, where as we've completed a couple missions and have more knowledge of the conditions of the missions, both from a physiological and psychological perspective, and just from a operational perspective, then the crew we are more aware of the risks and have learned that the risks are manageable. The ones that we speculate or extrapolate to exist may not have an effect, or they may have a different effect, or they may have more profound effect. But we can identify research ways to adjust for those, and in turn allows for a larger crew that is not as individually specialized, or I should say specialized in different ways. Maybe have a more diverse group of scientists, geologists, biochemists, physiologists, atmospheric scientists. There's certainly a number of areas that could be explored and studied on Mars, or even outside science. It would be certainly helpful to have for crew morale, maybe a comedian on board to keep everyone's joking. But
and you're gonna find one member who will be like, I don't like that joke.
So but the comedian then has the most important job then, right? To convince So
but look, what happens, because this is a very interesting conversation. I had that conversation with some people who are running habitats and in different parts of the world on this podcast. And the thing is, as we speak about this crew dynamic of 6 people and doing all the testing and doing analog missions based on that NASA research. So my question for them was, and they couldn't answer, but they just kind of thought about it, and they said, yeah, I think we should do that too, because what happens when the crew dynamics changes from 6 to 20 or 30, and you get those diverse people of the first people who went to Mars, who are kind of the pioneers, just like Buzz Aldrin, and we have all these great people, and they're like, we look at them as a rock stars, right? And we treat them as a rock stars. But what happens when those rock stars are there, the pioneers who kind of created the first habitats for us to live in, and then the rest of the people come in? Not the ones, of course, the important people, but what happens when the rock stars collide just with the regular scientists, or the bum heads? Because they don't understand maybe the values are different, the perspectives are different. So what happens in those scenarios?
Yes, so there may be, with regards to the mindset that different individuals may have to be motivated as part of of this new frontier, and I think it's for the first cohort of any cohort of a crew, whether through the agencies, whether through space tourism. I think it's helpful, and is part of the training as well, with regards to astronaut training, and that started with the NASA space program in the 60s, where it's crew selections uh, were also tied with service, where it's the very unique opportunity to serve and support our human space exploration program. Um, and in that mindset, it's service also is connected with representation, where the first cohort of individuals uh, uh, on the surface of Mars or on a mission to Mars um, uh, are a reflection of all of us, representative of all of us, um, and uh, 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 in turn are in, have been and continue to be encouraged to consider human. Of course, there's various elements in terms of a race to Mars, race to the moon, but if if the first cohort of crew members on the surface of the moon are there for the objective of being rock stars, then likely uh, the uh, uh, the sustainability element of the mission will be less likely to lead to mission success, because teamwork fundamentally is about collaboration and not being a rock star, right? Of course, everyone is it's
Yeah, but
would be
what happens in that scenario? I do understand, because I'm pretty sure like astronauts that, like, I never met one. I would love to, and maybe somebody, because look, fully representing today. But
yeah,
look, I would love to meet somebody, and I'm sure those are the nicest people ever. But I'm talking about, so I'll give you a very short scenario, right?
yes,
I'm coming in, somebody else comes in, and they're like, you know, gives their personal opinion about things that they want, okay, and they're doing that not for themselves. They're looking at this kind of humanistic, you know, futuristic, you know, outlook, and they want to do that for the people. But some of the
yes,
people might clash in with that because, oh, so you think you're a rock star, and that's what you say, that you kind of want to lead us. I know better, you know. So
yes,
I'm
yes,
talking
yes,
about those scenarios.
yes,
They just want to
yes,
help us, but
yes,
we
yes.
think they're kind of, you know, want to run the show.
Yes, so certainly there's, and that is connected with crew psychology and decision making throughout. There may be events during a mission that uh, may be may have been planned for, but also there may be events that may take place that will really test the crew and test their ability to uh, uh, to uh, 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 approach that challenge that is in the best interest uh, of uh, of everyone. And I mentioned, and I'll highlight everyone again, because that's true with any expedition, with any adventure. Where and it goes back. This goes back to my comment at the very beginning, where our human space exploration endeavors are the journey we learn about ourselves as well. Will I say there will be no conflict? No, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be disagreement, um, and but it's recognizing those and understanding what those are, that's what required for mission success, and that's what makes human space exploration different from rovers or telescopes. A rover is never going to conflict with another robot, right?
Unless he's programmed to do that.
Exactly. So unless the human that programmed will there be and that is uh, 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 why we that is what we learn in all of our human space exploration endeavors together. We learn that from the mirror, from space shuttle, from the analog. These are scenarios to test, and will they completely replicate everything that will happen on Mars? No, but then it's really up to for them to really rock stars. It's for them to handle those challenges and show that they can handle those challenges. Otherwise, I wouldn't call them rock stars.
Yeah. Gotcha. So look, one of the things that we cannot test here on the planet, and again, because in this environment, which is so hospitable, like it's the best place to be. You know, some people like, why do you want to go? Of course, because we're naturally explorers. That's what we did for our
Yes.
entire time while we've been here. So this is
Yes.
a must thing to do still. But like one other thing that I'm thinking about currently is what about the aging as we continue to
Yes.
think about and talk about that here on the planet where we want to live longer because it's all about the experience for us in this life,
Yes.
right, with the
Yes.
time that we
Yes.
have.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how the expectancy of life is going to look like on Mars because of the radiation, all these microgravity, all those different things that play out into that. So what do you think is going to this situation is going to look like?
Yes. So there are uh, uh, very interesting question. All the questions have been interesting, but with regards to this one in particular, and you highlighted aging, is that going back to my original comment as to how space, our human space exploration endeavors, uh, uh, provide a mechanism for us to learn more about ourselves. And that is very true from a biomedical perspective. We learn more about we learn how our bodies adapt, every organ, whether neurologically, psychologically, cardiovascular, bone, musculoskeletal, gastrointestinal, digestive system, um, immune, skin, all of the different organ systems cause our biology to behave in a certain way that is innovative. Is innovative, and we can use that innovative new knowledge and apply those in the context of other conditions, some medical conditions, uh, some conditions like aging, or even exercise. Um, to briefly highlight exercise, uh, 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 exercise activates certain skeletal muscle systems, and through spaceflight, we're learning that certain uh, 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 skeletal muscle pathways that are gravity related have a very unique role in the context of exercise that we would not have discovered, identified without the experiments in space. That's similar true that and that applies to there are certain biological events that occur unique from radiation exposure in space that may have biological similarities to the aging process. And in approaching those processes from that unique perspective, we learn more about those Earth-based processes, whether aging or medical conditions or so, deconditioning, altitude. There are environmental differences between that individuals in extreme environments, like in emergency medicine, where there are differences in oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is relevant to Mars because that's the atmosphere is totally different. Um, so comparing, contrasting how these different environments are, and then teasing apart how that affects the biology, provides uh, um, uh, a way to uh, connect dots in a way that uh, 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 is very unique and is plays into how our human space exploration challenges, literally and figuratively, self-discovery in many different ways. So I got caught focused on your question with regards to aging. There was another question you had, if I may ask for a reminder of that.
Yeah, so what I meant, I think it's, the thing that I would love to ask you is we talk about this kind of connecting dots process. And I think, as we live in this age of technology, how much of the technology, and again, you being still an engineer, like from engineering perspective, when it comes to technology advancement and, robotics and AI and all these different things, how much is that going to help in those environments of, microgravity, and maybe looking from the medicine side, conducting operations and like 1/3
Yeah.
of gravity, like how is
Yeah.
that going to play out in those kind of cases?
Yeah, it's engineering and technology are tools that enable and enhance our human experience in a number of different areas. From a space tourism perspective, more of the launch processes are becoming more automated. So that reduces the training and burden placed on astronauts in terms of how much they have to prioritize the launch and docking, return, and allow them to focus on and on other tasks and other training, other skills. And that certainly applies to, and that is through augmented technology and innovation, which again has Earth-based applications as well, right? So, and from the medical perspective, that is there's so much I could go into that in that topic with regards to how a mission to Mars, there's not going to be enough capacity to transport an MRI system. It's too heavy. It's too big. And from a clinical perspective, that's what you used for scanning and testing brain physiology, for one example. And can't take a CT scanner. You can't take a whole hospital to Mars. So that challenge is what encourages and fosters the question of how do we address those challenges? How do we innovate and develop new technologies, new systems that allow us to still effectively diagnose and measure what's the health of the crew and their performance. And similarly, from an exercise perspective, it'd be fantastic to transport a whole gym to Mars, but it requires compartmentalization and being so as an engineer, that's a uh, that's an engineer's dream, to be able to think about those kind of questions and design and develop those kind of tools to make the adventure for astronauts and for space travelers to focus on the experience versus how do I deal with medical problems? How do I and that's what robots are would be great to support missions in terms of you can have a crew of 4 to 6, but then complementary robots that are specifically designed to handle various scenarios if there's engineering failure somewhere, or if there's a something related with the rocketry system that would be not safe for an astronaut or a crew member to handle directly. So that's certainly what's required, I think, for both from a successful first crew on Mars, but also from a space tourism.
Got you, got
perspective.
you. So again, as I mentioned before, we live now in this time of technology, and technology advancement, like because of technology that we have, like the computer that I use, which by the way came through space exploration. It's due to
Yes,
that. So thank
yes,
you for all these people who decided to explore the phones that we have, the things that we take for granted these days, the cameras that we use. So a lot of it came through the space exploration, and like I remember seeing this picture of just the I think it was, I remember exactly how many gigabytes of data there was, but I remember seeing this huge servers, and now like I'm holding this is like 64 gigabytes, like you see that like
absolutely.
in my finger. So that's
Yes,
how
yes.
far we went, and I think things are getting smaller and smaller. So once we talk about like technology and getting smaller, and again we have to use some sort of a technology that would be small and could help us in different scenarios when it comes to that. So again, another thing like nanotechnology, going from
Yes, yes.
micro to macro. So can you talk about those technology aspects and concepts and how those concepts will be applied in the space flight?
I will say that is happening right now. I think the exponential growth that we're seeing in space travel with reusable rocketry and the that a and the computational hardware and software that plays a huge role in terms of uh, making space accessible for everyone. Um, and there are so and without those technological developments, that makes one, the engineering tools that we have available, there's less number of them, and that limits what we can accomplish, what we can design and develop from engineering perspective. And being able to having gone from the days of computers that were the size of refrigerators taking up huge hallway rooms to now what the computational processing power that we have more computational processing power on our phones than the uh, the computers in the Apollo mission control did for those lunar missions. Just opens up the capability also uh, 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 for more augmented and assistive technologies to reduce the the efforts required by the crew, as I highlighted before, not focusing so much on the launch itself, but really just being there for the launch and not controlling the launch. And similarly for processes related with the habitat, if there are with more computational hardware and software capabilities, that reduces the likelihood of failure, and also increases the capabilities of detecting failure. In terms of new sensors, more sensors can be implemented, can detect more factors, and can be integrated together. For example, with regards to habitats, in important, in particular for the crew, for habitat systems called the environmental control and life support system. And given a name, you can understand why it's so important for the crew. But that environmental control system has so many functions in terms of maintaining atmospheric temperature, pressure, ingredients in real time. It has to be dynamic, right? It can't be measuring oxygen level every 2 hours. If the oxygen level drops that would be terrible for the crew, right? Technology has really enabled that progression from uh, 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 data acquisition taking a long time and being limited to the amount of data to real time, and then acquiring a huge amount of data. And now we're in an era that we have computational algorithms like machine learning and artificial intelligence. So now we have the capacity to store large amounts of data and acquire large amounts of data, but interpretation is the next step, right? Where the human mind is again, robot versus a person, so creative. The human mind is so much more creative and can connect the dots, connect the data in a much more rapid pace than a robot can do. But if that could be applied from in a space flight, that again allows the crew to focus on other experiences, other tasks, and then allow the technology to augment and support them versus uh, 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 astronauts have less sleep on station, and and that's partially due to workload, and but also the number of tasks they do on a daily basis. So if there are ways to it's so beneficial in so many different ways. It from a health perspective allows them to, and then from an operational perspective, allow them to do more science, more innovation, more experiencing space versus, and then staying healthier. And that's where I think, yeah, for sure, technology it doesn't just increase the capacity and capabilities, but also changes the experience for the human element of human space exploration. That I think is occurring right now, and will be very relevant to missions on the moon and to Mars.
Yes. So look, personally, like I love everything that's happening right now in the space industry. I see so many great, enthusiastic, innovative companies, people, individuals that coming up right now because of this boom that kind of this entire COVID situation kind of, increased the speed and just the rate of this growth. And I seen like so many come down to like Facebook pages and people just buying telescopes, reading books, and marketing. Like it's everywhere. Space is everywhere. So, but I think it can stop because eventually we will go to this kind of normal life scenario as we should. But with that, I think there will be a lot of people who will see the cases of people selling their telescopes, abandoning the books, not thinking about the space anymore, to go back to the job, to reaching for the career and all these things. So, and I think science communication is really important at this stage, just to continue to build up momentum, just for people to understand that space industry is open for everybody. And
yes.
Kind of, if you're an architect in medical field, if you're a lawyer or you're an engineer, like a computer scientist, those are places for you right now that you can be part of, kind of working on. It doesn't have to be full-time, could be part-time, working on projects with the startup companies. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. So how we can increase this rate of spreading the word out about the space industry and just making people know that this is what's going to happen in the near future?
Yes. So, in short, having more science communication like what you're doing, Martinez. So thank you, first of all, for you're really helping directly respond to that question.
By the way, this wasn't a question about me, but I'll take it.
Well, so but science communication in general increases awareness of space, and that in turn not just increases from my perspective excitement, but also engagement. And engagement is really what makes space accessible for everyone. It's the opportunities that are provided through engagement with the opportunities that's really a responsibility of the space programs or companies, or to foster the environment to increase those opportunities. But then it's critical for those to really make space accessible for everyone, to increase engagement, but also engagement in the context of of making it user friendly, so to speak, depending on the user. And how they may be interested in supporting our human space exploration. Uh, there's oh there's everyone and everyone. I'm sorry, anyone and everyone is welcome to support our human space exploration endeavors, and it requires all this disciplines. And from my perspective, the focus may the perception of the focus may be on the rockets and the satellites and the rovers. But those are platforms for us to get there and to learn. But to truly experience, that's what requires everyone's support and engagement and interest. And I think related with our accessibility because of technology, again, making it more accessible from internet access, from a knowledge perspective, knowledge just in terms of what we understand with regards to our human space exploration and what we don't understand, and how do we learn about what we don't understand, and then in turn, uh, 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 how that connects with uh, 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 the user in terms of uh, uh, um, what stage of their career are they, a high school student or even middle school student or even younger than that, or in university, college, or young professional, or and then depending on the background and their interest in terms of how they would like to contribute, having more engagement between the environments, the space agencies and the private companies and the startup companies and the healthcare, anyone that is supporting the space program, our human space exploration program, and connecting with connecting with a general public. That's happening with more citizen science programs, where you highlight that one can easily purchase a telescope and from the backyard join an amateur science, amateur astronomy program, and share images with data, share images, and even build their own little constellation of telescopes within a community, and that provides more knowledge, more data, and that's similarly true with there have been outreach events by NASA and other agencies in terms of program development or supporting data analyses of space biology research, and supporting so that there's the opportunities, the level of opportunities are increasing, and it has really gone back to the level of accessibility, which with increasing launches in the space, increasing platforms, nanosats and CubeSats and all those miniaturized satellites really allow unique ways to access space that in turn increases user base.
For sure, because I see that a lot just by having conversations or just by observing. You can see a lot just by looking, and I see a lot of countries are, because we see the news, like we can see like space.com, NASA or ESA's like news, and we're like, oh my God, there's something happening. But when we're going to take everything apart, we actually see there's not a lot happening. We see news about SpaceX and NASA and Artemis missions. Again, we have long timelines unless it's a SpaceX, and that's why everybody looks up to them, because they have they put all these great fireworks show for people, and it's like short timelines. We're going to go in 10 years, 20 years, which is quite short still.
Yes, yes.
What NASA projected. Well, I have nothing against them, but just people, they have no patience, including myself. So having that is great, but I think there is all those opportunities around for everyday people. Just
Yes.
like my example, like working on different organizations. Like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not coming from this background. I have another skills in different parts of business or organizational stuff that I can provide value for those organizations and help them to grow, because it's through that collaboration. But I think if it comes to an international level, we're going to see another thing that is very outdated, which is the space law and the space treaty. And that's where I think where we clash, and that's why we cannot find the middle for that innovation to kind of to blossom and grow faster, because of
Yes.
those laws and regulations, which of course we have. The space law is a very interesting field, and of course we have people looking after that, but we need many more people, because I think it's going to be long and very boring process. So
I agree. So in terms of, I'm all for the acceleration of our space adventure,
yep.
and this goes back to, I think, with regards to, I think that will change. In my opinion, I think that will change, and it's a little bit of catch up, in my opinion, of these other areas versus the engineering. And once the engineering has aspects in terms of rocket launches and tools and the kind of projects that can be developed. There's the International Space Station, but it's packed with experiments and projects already. But there's going to be more potential habitats planned, and that increases the number of potential projects. And so once there's it's right now largely on hardware. The technology is caught up, the hardware is caught up, where the current regulatory limitations are tied to the capacity of the engineering systems. That is really starting to change, in my opinion. I think the past 10 years, the engineering components to get to space have. I think the next 10 years, that's where the other elements that you highlighted in terms of user accessibility, in terms of types of projects, communities can be involved in and participate. That I think is the next phase of space exploration. I think that's also true with space medicine and space tourism. As a scientist in the field, I'd love to do more space medicine projects, but that requires more people to go into space. So that's starting to happen. That's starting to happen. So and more projects, more space fair projects. So that's starting to happen. And I think that is what the next phase of interaction, citizen science, so to speak. It's been the development of platforms to get us into space. Now it's to develop the platforms and infrastructure for to make it accessible. And that's happening, and that will continue to grow, I speculate. So I think hold on to your frustration just for a bit longer, but I think that'll change right around the corner.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said the next phase of science. It's not the next decade or 100 years, something like that. So it's very good. So look, again, I love the fact that you're working on all these different things, and I think space medicine, engineering, and those are very, very important pieces, especially when it comes to just continue to make sure that when we continue to expand and travel through space and creating those habitable places to live on Moon and Mars, like how we're going to keep ourselves sane, how we're going to take care of our bodies. Again, as we talked about the aging,
yeah.
like I'm sure everybody who's going to be there, they will love to live same or maybe longer. I don't know what type of effects it's going to have on a human body long term, because if it's less gravity, so that means you age slower or faster. Again, radiation, all these different aspects. So we need to look into that industry more, which again, I had only a few conversations with been privileged to do so with the people like yourself on this podcast. But these people tell me that there are other people who are working on the space medicine field and engineering, other things. So it's really great. But the question is, look, for you personally, as you continue to kind of, through that self-discovery personally yourself, and continue to grow as a person and do other things and being involved in other projects, like, what do you think overall, as we talked about the Buzz Aldrin leaving the first step, right? So what do you think is your first step is going to be, and what the legacy is going to look like for Sir personally?
There's certainly from traveling to Mars, there's certainly with any adventure, I think risks involved, and as an individual in the space medicine field, the idea is to learn about what those risks are and minimize them, and uh, uh, develop ways to uh, uh, improve the lifestyle as best one can, given the limitations of being on Mars. That journey would be, it might be humanity's most exciting journey, but also uh, uh, we would be leaving the confines of planet Earth and everything that planet Earth has to offer. So that's what, from a human space exploration, in terms of what it will be like to live on Mars versus living on Earth. There's been discussions about terraforming on Mars and et cetera, et cetera. Um, uh, um, uh, those are very very long-term plans. But so that will always be a challenge, but I don't think that should take away from our interest to explore. Um, but so so those were the comments with respect to how to handle the the safety concerns of a mission to Mars. Now with legacy, so from my perspective, dozens, hundreds, thousands, as many more individuals, whether within space agencies, whether external space agencies, whether within uh, 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 space companies of all different types, or outside space companies, to become engaged and support our our long-term and sustained presence um, uh, uh, in space and in locations such as the moon, or around the moon, or Mars. And from my bias is that those challenges will be primarily medically related. The engineering, we have those, the physics of those are not going to change. We know what the physics are, and it's a matter of innovating and optimizing those systems. But the biology will certainly change, based off of the physical environments of space. The physical environments determine the biological responses, and that's where we are still very much in the discovery phase. So to inspire and encourage more individuals to approach that line of inquiry, and discovery and exploration uh, would be make me happier than having the opportunity to fly into space personally even. So I would be thrilled to have a, a comprehensive understanding of how we as people, how we adapt to the space environment. That would be the answer to long-term sustained presence in around the Earth through orbiting stations like the International Space Station and others, on the surface of the moon or around the moon, and in particular with Mars. It's discovering that knowledge and understanding it, and then as you asked the question with regards to uh, um, uh, how to make it so we enjoy it versus having it being uncomfortable, at 10 on the scale I highlighted earlier, or 11. It's really all of that. So that would be whether I could contribute that, or if I could my preference would be to inspire dozens, hundreds of thousands, because there's there's really that much knowledge we still don't know, and we are still yet to discover. So
Exactly. So this is a great, I think, message for the people who are going to be listening, and maybe it's the first time they coming across this podcast, or they're listening or watching this on YouTube, and they're like, oh, this is available. Yeah, this is available for everybody. And if you stay it until the end, you got the answer now from Sunny to realize that, because look, this is really the time right now to do something. And if that's something, it's even 1% of your time dedicating to the space industry. It's just like getting back, to that kind of getting the bug, getting bitten by the bug again. Because when we grow up as kids, regardless the gender, or maybe again for the males, it's more kind of more influential. But when we get asked who it's going to be, like fireman, doctor, and astronaut, it's going to be somewhere there, right? So
yeah.
we all want that. We all kind of dream about the future. We all love it, but because we grow up and we have those kind of moments of career and money and family and buying houses and things, and I do understand like all of that is important. We should enjoy that, and again, because it's all about the experience in life. But we should take some time and again think about what we can do in the space industry and become part of that and add value to that, if it's through science communication or the skills as we have through the profession. I mean, this is available right now. So look, again, at the end of the day, you will find information where you can contact with Dr. Sunny, and so LinkedIn, Instagram. This man is super generous, grateful with his time again for today, so I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm sure he will be available for you guys and girls to answer a few questions about, science, engineering, things that we discussed today. So I'm sure he will say yes. Feel free to get in contact with them through LinkedIn. That's a good place, and have that conversation and see if there's potential maybe alignment for collaboration and things like that. Look, so that's what it's all about. So again, Dr. Sunny, thank you so much for coming over. I wish you all the success. Hopefully through this podcast, we can reach more people, so we decrease the number from 10,000, 100,000, where we have to few less people that we have to reach. And look, I wish you a lot of success and a lot of things. I'm sure you're going to do amazing job in the things that you're working on in the space medicine field and engineering and the rest of the things that you're working on. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Martinez, for all those compliments, and likewise, this has been a thank you for the opportunity. It's been a fantastic conversation, and on that note, I hope it certainly inspires even 1% of interest of the audience to consider supporting our human space exploration endeavors together. So
Yes.
with that said, thank you again.
Thank you. Well, at least you inspire me. So we got one person. Okay, so I'm gonna take that and do whatever I have to do with it. Gotcha, guys. So that's it. So there's some inspiration for you also, guys and girls. And again, thank you for watching or listening, and I'll see you next time very soon. So thanks.